Coptic Orthodox Christians in Egypt are mourning the loss of at least 40 people who died in a church fire. A procession of coffins enters one of two churches where funerals were held today. The fire killed the parish priest and many children. At least 14 others were injured. An electrical failure is suspected to be the cause of the fire. China announces that it will continue military drills around Taiwan.
恪守一个中国原则和中美3个联合公报规定。
The latest word follows a new visit by U.S. lawmakers to the self-ruled island led by Senator Ed Markey. Beijing calls American talks with Taipei's leaders a violation of its national sovereignty. China began war games earlier this month after House Speaker Nancy Pelosi visited Taiwan. And joining us now to discuss is Chang, author of The Coming Collapse of China and the Great U.S.-China Tech War. Gordon, great to be with you. As mentioned, more U.S. lawmakers visited Taiwan over the weekend. Your thoughts on the visit, what it symbolizes, and what it signals to China?
The signal from this visit is that the United States will not be intimidated. You know, Beijing can huff and puff, it can scream, it can yell, it can try to intimidate. But Congress clearly is not. Speaker Pelosi was not, and Senator Ed Markey was not. But who was intimidated was President Biden, who has tried to prevent Speaker Pelosi's trip. These delegations are important because they say to Beijing, look, we are not going to give in to threats, which means we are not going to legitimize and we are not going to embolden the worst elements in the Chinese political system by showing everybody else that intimidation works.
Yeah, and in response to the visit, China carried out some military drills, calling them, quote, stern deterrent to the United States and Taiwan continuing to play political tricks and undermine peace and stability across the Taiwan Strait. Your reaction, Gordon?
Well, these Chinese drills, especially the ones that followed Speaker Pelosi's visit, were especially provocative because China declared 6 and then 7 live fire exclusion zones. One of those zones to the southwest of the main island of Taiwan was so close that it actually infringed on sovereign Taiwan airspace and water. And, you know, what clearly Beijing is trying to practice an embargo. So the United States needs to pre-position supplies and munitions on the island because we may not be able to get to it right away because of these Chinese exclusion zones.
Yeah, and Gordon, another thing I want to touch on is this trade ban that China has placed on a number of products from Taiwan, including seafood, citing COVID as the reason. However, the timing is pretty curious as it seemed to line up with Speaker Pelosi's visit to the island nation. What more do you know about this and also the impact that it could have on Taiwan's economy?
Yeah. These bans on Taiwan products really affect very, very few of them. What would be important is, and this would be significant, but China didn't do it, would be a ban on semiconductors that Taiwan makes, which China absolutely needs. So Beijing was signaling here that it was upset, but it wasn't really going to impose a ban that would hurt either Taiwan or China.
Yeah, and switching gears just a bit here, Henry Kissinger, former Secretary of State, recently wrote a book where he expressed concern over America inching closer to war with both Russia and China. What do you think? I mean, do you think that we're headed in that direction?
We're certainly headed in that direction, Tracy. You know, Kissinger, in that July interview he gave the Wall Street Journal, which was published on Friday, actually said we are on the edge of war with Russia and China. And I actually think that he is right. The Chinese are actually been preparing for war for 2 years. They're trying to mobilize all of society. And that means that Xi Jinping is serious. You know, I think the Chinese understand that war would not be in China's best interest. But emotionally, Xi Jinping and the flag officers, the generals and admirals, they really want to kill somebody. And so therefore, when you have a state that does that, feels that way, they usually succeed in starting a conflict of some sort because they really are just itching to kill Americans right now.
Something else to touch on, too, the New York Times reporting that members of Congress are growing frustrated with the Biden administration's lack of movement on ensuring Americans' data is protected while using apps like TikTok. Can we talk more about this and how much China is gaining from having access to this data?
China is gaining all sorts of access, and a lot of it will be used for blackmail purposes, for intimidation purposes, but also just in general, the data that China's collecting feeds into their artificial intelligence systems. And the more data you put into AI, the better it is. And the thing here that's ominous is that China is prohibiting the transfer of Chinese data out of China, including DNA profiles. So while they're hoovering up our DNA, they're preventing us from looking at Chinese DNA. That certainly indicates that they've got a biological weapons program.
Gordon, we have probably about a minute left or so, but before I let you go, any final thoughts?
Well, right now, the Biden administration should be banning TikTok. President Trump banned it. President Biden lifted that ban. But we know that in 2020, according to reporting from the federal government unit, that TikTok was fomenting violence on American streets. That's not just a federal crime. That is an act of war. And yet the Biden administration's not doing anything about this. This is a dereliction of President Biden's highest constitutional obligation, which is to defend the American people from foreign attack. I think the American people should start asking their president, what is he doing? Because this just makes no sense whatsoever.
Yeah, and Gordon, we're going to leave it right there. Thank you so much, as always, for your time and your analysis. Always appreciate it.
Thank you, Tracy.